Okay, first thing you want to do is tape down your paper and then divide it into different sections. As you tape down your paper, it's a good idea to press the tape against a sweater or a hoodie or something that will pull up some of those fibers to make the tape not so sticky. When you tape it down, make sure that you leave a little space so that it sticks to the table. And when you press it down, you're going to press a little bit harder on the table portion and a little bit lighter where the paper is. Once you tape down all four sides, you're going to divide it in half. And it's a good idea, again, every time you're adding tape to press it on either your pants or Levi's or hoodie or something so that it doesn't stay stuck to your paper. Otherwise, when you go to pull it off, it's going to rip the paper. All right, now that you've taped down your paper, you're going to use the pictures that I gave as a reference to draw onto your paper. Now, when you're drawing this on, really some people get confused and kind of worried, but just look at the basic shape. So like that cylinder, the basic shape is a rectangle. So maybe just start off by drawing a rectangle. And then after you've drawn a rectangle, just round off the top and round off the bottom, right? So that it has that cylinder shape. So in this case, you see me putting an oval shape at the top and then a half oval shape or like a smiley face at the bottom. And then the cube is a little bit trickier. In this case, I'm going to draw a diamond shape just to mimic the top of that cube. And then after I draw that diamond shape, I'm going to draw 3 vertical lines that line up with each corner or each bottom corner of that diamond shape. And the biggest thing here is that you make sure the lines are the same size so that the left side will match the right side and so on. Another thing I like to do is just look at the angle of the bottom side of that diamond and then copy that same angle. And then when you look over at the entire thing, you might say, oh, maybe it's too short or maybe it's too tall, and then just make those adjustments. Like in this case, it was a little bit too short, so I added a little bit more length to this cube. And for the sphere, that's probably the easiest. You really are just drawing a circle. As you're watching this demonstration, it's a good idea to just pause it every once in a while so that you know what to do or have time to actually perform that task. Some students, they'll try and watch the whole video and then afterwards try and perform the task, and then it doesn't end up as good because they're not sure what to do or they forget a step. So here I'm using a ruler just so that I make sure that the table or whatever that surface is shows up straight across from the left side to the right side. Another thing you want to draw, you don't typically draw this immediately, but with painting you want to see where those shadows go. So I'm drawing out the shadow, looking at where it lines up on the cube and where it lines up on the ground area, just to know where I'm going to be painting that darker color. And as you look at overall at the whole, you might notice you need to make adjustments. In this case, I'm looking at the cylinder, and that cylinder looks a little bit too narrow, right? Because on top of the cube, it ends up landing a little bit more to the right. So I'm going to erase that line and then draw that more accurately or where I feel like it should be ending. So that cylinder is just going to be a little bit wider. And it's a good idea to draw any shaded areas that you think you might need to remember where they are. Now we want to match the tones on our paper with the tones of our painting. So if I just added a number to each color so that I know, and then on my paper, first on the black and white drawing, I'm going to add those numbers, doing all the ones first and then going to the twos, which would be slightly darker, and so on. Once I've labeled my paper for my drawing where they kind of match my painting, then I will label where I'm going to be painting my still life. So you can see right here I'm just labeling everything on the picture. Normally we would look at a real still life and then try and do this, but that's a little difficult right now. All right, once you've got it labeled on your paper, then you're going to repeat this process for another space on your watercolor paper. And then right here you see me starting to mix my paints. Now before you paint individual areas, what I like to do is paint the entire paper, whatever the lightest color is. In this case it's a number 1. And then I do a little testing on a little piece of scratch paper. Just regular paper is fine, just to test the color. And then if I feel comfortable with that, I'm going to paint over the entire surface of my painting with that light number 1 color. Oh, another important thing. So I drew the lines on this paper a little bit darker than I normally would. You really want to draw your lines very light. And the reason why is because you don't want all those lines showing through when you paint. So here I'm just going through with my eraser, lightening up those lines a little bit. I can see them plenty well. I know it's kind of hard to see on the camera, but now when I paint over it, my drawings underneath won't show up as well. Keep in mind, when you start painting, I like to put a little bit on and then check it with my value scale I already created. If I notice it's a little bit too dark, I'll just add some water to my palette. And that little spot that I added on the paper, it's fine, it's still wet, so I'll just use my paintbrush to just mix it in. So now I've prepared my surface of my painting. If I were to paint directly onto that, the colors would just bleed together. Since I don't want that, I'm going to let it dry, not so that it's totally dry, but so that it's dry enough to where if I add paint, it doesn't spread. When you fill it with your hand, it should feel pretty dry. All right, and then start with the next number. So in this case, number 2. I do a little tester on my scratch paper, see if those colors match. If it's too dark, then I know I need to add a little bit of water. And then I'll paint all the number 2 areas. Now for this one, I'm doing a step value scale, so you're going to see a distinct difference between a number 2 color or a number 3 color, and they're going to be separated. All right, I'm going to speed this up just a little bit. Remember how I said I was going to speed this up? It's the wrong spot. Now I'm going to speed this up. And you're going to see that I'm doing the same process for each color. Now here's the big thing. As you're painting the different colors, darker or lighter. You're continually looking back at your value scale to make sure you're matching the correct colors. As you paint, you might make some adjustments. In this painting, I noticed that the shadow I messed up on. The shadow should go underneath the cube a little bit further, so I'll do that. If there's a spot that bleeds into another area, for example, next to that sphere, you can get a paper towel or a tissue and then wipe up the area that spilled over to fix that. And then just using your paintbrush, you just repaint that area so you have a nice crisp edge. Part of this painting is recognizing the edges of things. When you recognize the edge of an object, you can make it stand out a lot more. You can make it kind of pops out more than it normally would. All right, now is where I speed up quite a bit what I'm doing. This whole thing, when I did this, it took me, maybe 45 minutes to an hour. I did have to move video every once in a while, but it took quite a while. You want to take your time. You'll notice to the top right of that cube, I didn't go right next to it because I was afraid the number 4 color was still a little bit wet. So I started painting everything else besides that little corner, and then later on I go over that corner to clean up that edge. You can paint a little quicker when it's an area that's away from other shapes, but whenever you have to do an edge, take your time, do pulling strokes, and when you lift your paintbrush, and when you lift your paintbrush, just make sure you're not flicking the water out around. Pay close attention also to where your wrist is. If you've already painted an area and then you put your wrist on that painted area, you'll end up with paint getting smeared on your paper. Once I finish a painting, one thing I like to do is get my value scale back out and then compare the colors to see if I've matched them correctly, and then make alterations if needed. In this case, I thought I was done, and then I'm like, well, wait, are those colors right? And then I got up my value scale. You could do that before, so that when you compare a 4, does it really look like a 4? Does a 1 look like a 1? And so on. And if you're like, oh man, the number 6 color, that needs to be darker, then just go back and fix that. Okay, and that's all there is to it.